So allow me to kick off this webinar by welcoming you all to this session, and hopefully we'll try to uncover some of the concepts behind Lean as strategy for operational excellence. Before we get started into talking about the concepts and principles and tools of Lean, let me just introduce myself. My name is Fawzi Bawab. I'm a partner and senior consultant with Meirc Training and Consulting. My background is engineering, a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering and a Master's of Science in Industrial Engineering. Currently preparing my PhD at Heriot-Watt University at Edinburgh Business School. My focus is on Lean and Six Sigma, and I thought I will share my experience and practical implementation on Lean and Six Sigma in terms of how we can use it to address the strategy in organization. I'm sure every organization talks about operational and organizational excellence, and I'm sure many of you already have a strategy or initiatives through which they can implement the goals of operational excellence. Well, Lean is a tool and a strategy that can help organization achieve this. So let me quickly also go through some of the concepts of the objectives of this session. The session will address the following concepts. We will talk about the need of Lean and why organizations address Lean and use Lean in their operations, whether hospitals, whether government, whether services, airlines. And of course, we cannot talk about Lean without talking about one of my favorite topics, which is Six Sigma. And the fusion and integration of Lean Six Sigma comes under a concept that we call today LSS, or Lean Six Sigma. And as we get into the webinar, we'll start talking about definitions of Lean, history of Lean, and of course the principles of Lean. Once we talk about the principles of Lean, we will talk about some of the main concepts of Lean, and of course how companies are currently implementing Lean in their operation as a strategy for organizational excellence and improvement. We will talk or mention the 7 or 8 deadly waste, or as the Japanese call it, MODA. And I have picked a couple of tools that are used within the Lean function or domain. We will talk about 5S and 1-piece flow. So let's get started and just get your concept or sort of ideas of what is Lean. So I have some kind of a poll or question for you, and the question is around Lean. So let me run the question and just pick your choice, multiple choice question. So here is the survey. So the primary goal of Lean is to reduce what? Is it about delay? Is it about waste? Is it about MODA? All of the above. Let me know what you think. MODA is Japanese, by the way, and I'll give you the translation in a minute, but MODA is something related to Lean. So I see everyone is picking all of the above, which is great, I think. Okay, so Lean is about what? Is about reducing something that we are concerned of, something that we would like to do faster, better. So the primary goal of Lean is to reduce delay, waste, MODA, which is Japanese word, or all of the above. I see. All right, let me try to see what's our voting looks like here, and let me end the voting and share with you the results. So the results are showing that most of us, well, 33%, agrees that it's all above the above, and this is actually true. Lean is about reducing delay. It's about looking at the waste in our operations to try to achieve organizational excellence. MODA is just a word in Japanese which means waste. So it's another way or to describe waste. And we will, of course, talk about the definitions and the different types of waste. So going back to our slides, if we want to look at Lean, Lean is about reducing delay. But as a quality professional working on Lean and Six Sigma, you're most occupied and you are trying to seek to neutralize three main demons. The three demons that we always look for are the defects, delays, and deviation or variation. So you could immediately tell that Lean is about addressing one of the main demons. The three demons, as we just mentioned, are about reducing the time, delays. What is taking you so long to get my order or transaction? It's about reducing variation and deviation. So maybe there is a huge variation in your processes that is creating lack of consistency. We as users, we always want consistency. Maybe you're giving me the wrong order, the wrong prescription, the wrong output. Well, this is what we call a defect. All of the three demons are the main concern of quality professionals. Indeed, Lean is about focusing on one of them, which is delays. But quality professionals usually will address multiple demons. And the two guns I continuously use in addressing demons are the Lean and Six Sigma. So there is a benefit behind combining Lean and Six Sigma. Although in this webinar we will be focusing on Lean, but I just wanted to draw your attention that we could be using another type of a gun or an initiative which we call Six Sigma. And I will be presenting some kind of a comparison between the two approaches at the end of the webinar. So let's talk a little bit about history of Lean. You know, what basically triggered Lean? What is Lean? Well, if you go back here to the craft production, this was the initial thinking where people were doing craft production. It was very customized, very specialized. But then later on, people started talking about, well, what can we bring in terms of science? This is where Frederick Taylor started to introduce the time and motion studies. And after that, Henry Ford started talking about assembly lines manufacturing and creating what we call mass production. So the mass production here basically is about producing more, but you want to produce more in a consistent way and to minimize the time. Well, the mass production started to actually be developed and mastered by Toyota. And a couple of guys from Japan, Ono and Shingo, started to perfect the Toyota production system, or as we call it today, the TPS guidelines. It sort of got very popular by the book that was published by Womack and Jones, which is sort of a benchmarking study that was done internationally on what are the best practices for production. This actually came in as what we call the lean enterprise or the lean thinking. And the machine that changed the world, which is the book by Womack and Jones, came in and sort of made lean very popular. Now, if you look on the other side, the concept of quality, the concept of controlling variation by Shewhart and Juran and Deming, and later on by Motorola, came up with the Six Sigma concept. And later on, of course, as we know it today, the Lean Six Sigma concept. So there is some kind of a marriage or a fusion that happened between Lean and Six Sigma, and many practitioners today will tend to address and talk about the two concepts together. So this is mainly the history and how it came around, but let me also give you a little bit of the main characters or the key figures in Lean history. As we mentioned, Henry Ford, the founder of the Ford Motor, started to look into ways to create that mass production and to reduce the cycle time for producing cars. Taiichi Ono, one of the Japanese employees at Toyota and an author of several books, started mastering and putting together the Toyota production system. Shingo, a Japanese industrial engineer, also came in and started perfecting some of the concepts. And of course, the American James Womack and his colleagues who authored the book, The Machine That Changed the World, and created the lean thinking movement. So basically, this is a little bit of history. So what is lean? What are the principles that drive lean? Why is lean important for us to try to reduce delay and cut down waste? So the 5 principles that are often addressed when we want to transform or deploy a lean thinking, the first one is about specifying value. And when we say value, the value is what the customer perceives as a value. So there's a little bit of discussion here about connecting the initiative of lean to customers, how customers perceive value. Once that is confirmed, we need to conduct an exercise of mapping what we call the value stream, i.e. the flow of the product, the flow of the transaction, mapping all the steps in an effort to identify the non-value added. And the non-value added is areas, things that are not adding value to the operation and result in an extensive or extended time. Establishing the flow is where we start talking about the beginning of the flow and the end of the flow, while establishing concepts like the one-piece flow or implementing the pull concept versus the push. And of course, it finishes with working to perfection, which is the complete elimination of waste. So under each of these principles, there are a number of guidelines, things that we have to do and teach our team. Now, people call lean a mindset because this is where the lean concepts and the lean employees will start to adopt and buy into the concept of calling a waste a waste. So in this sense, specifying value from the standpoint of the end customer creates a shift from the perspective of an employee who might look at steps and consider them an added value, while if you go to the customer and the customer will tell you, well, I'm not ready to pay for it. This is not adding value to the work that I am subscribed to. So whether you have to do it right the first time, whether the customer is willing to pay for it, and whether the things are done right and achieves a physical change. If you're doing something that is not achieving a change to the product or service, you are conducting a non-value added. So we will talk in a slide later on about these different types of ways that might be identified in your value. And there is an alarming fact later on that I will actually test you on it, which is what is the percentage of the non-value added activities. That is on the first step. The second one is to identify the steps that are required to move an operation from one area to another. And of course, the challenging becomes very important. Why are we doing it? Would the customer think the product is worthless if the step could be removed or taken out? So we're engaging in a discussion where every step is being challenged. Every activity is being sort of asked, why do you exist? What is the value that you have to contribute to the concept? So you can look at different value streams, order to cash, concept to launch, and we have to pick and map the value stream as it comes through. Now, as we move from the mapping the value stream, we move to establishing the flow. And this is where we want to get away from the thinking of silos or departments. And I know this is what companies usually do, but once we see something called the one-piece flow, which requires every step in the process to be capable, done right the first time, maintenance activities are engaged, so we have everything available to run with minimal downtime. And we can use this to reduce bottlenecks and reduce inventory. So moving from what we call batch processing to continuous flow, or the 1 minute or one piece flow, that will actually reduce the cycle time substantially. So we'll see an example later on the one piece flow. If we start looking here at the pull. So what is pull? It's a concept that is called in Lean that you cannot send any part or service to the next step or area unless they are ready. And we tend to use signals, Japanese call it kanbans, which basically a signal or a sign, or it could be any type of a card that signals that you are ready now to start pulling. So rather than pushing the service or product to the next department or area, you basically wait for them to tell you that they are ready. Immediately, this type of thinking or application reveals any bottlenecks and constraints. So you basically have to balance your line. So nothing is done downstream until required upstream. Now, the fifth one is basically to continually improve processes, moving from a current state to the future state and then challenging it so we can move to the next future state. So as you see, the 5 steps or the 5 principles of Lean will require a mindset that will challenge every employee to look at every step, every activity, and challenge that step and say, why does it exist? Does it add value? And of course, putting your Lean glasses on and trying to identify any potential waste. So if you want to define Lean and you want to put a definition, Lean can be defined as follows: a systematic approach through which we can identify and eliminate waste, MODA, non-value added activities, by flowing the product, by identifying the value and the flow from the customer, so we can actually continuously perfect and reduce the time. So there is a little bit of consistency of the Lean approach with Six Sigma, because someone can tell you, I cannot do Lean if your processes are not stable, your processes are not exhibiting high capability, if your processes are generating scrap. Lean cannot really work without having that in. Hence the need for Six Sigma. And I bet any work that you do yourself, you have wondered, here is your work, here is the actual work that is being done, but I'm sure every activity would contain some kind of a waiting, whether waiting for the printers to print, or whether waiting for the machine to be fixed, or whether for waiting to move from one area to get some stationery or tools, errors, mistakes. There are many activities that are creating issues. And if you think of the total cycle time from here to here, look at the percentage, look at the time that you may be doing the work here, but look at the large percentage that is spent on non-valued activities. So what are we trying to achieve in Lean? We are trying to remove, we are trying to identify and then reduce all of these activities. So 2 concepts might come into our definitions right now. What is value and what is waste? So when we say a value, it's a capability that we've tried to provide to the customer at the right time and at an appropriate price, as defined by the specification of the customers. So all features of what matters to the customer is being delivered. We don't want to produce parts or service that is not required, because then everything becomes a waste. But in the same sense, any activity that we do to provide value should be studied, challenged, to try to remove activities that are not contributing to the value itself. So the discussion of what is a value to the customer, and then of course, how do we remove that waste? So if you think about different types of waste and why would you choose Lean as a strategy in your organization, I mean, just mention these keywords to your management. We want a strategy. We want an initiative to try to reduce the cycle time that it takes us to do a procurement order, or the time that it takes us to hire an employee, or the time that we run to admit a patient in a hospital. We want to improve performance. We want to improve customer satisfaction, which basically would be a result in lean. If you look at these benefits, I'm sure your management will agree with you that all these benefits tends to be very useful and beneficial for organization. Hence, many organizations are using lean today. Maybe some of them are not calling it lean per se, but they're using it maybe continual improvement, but lean is embedded within the thinking of reducing waste and of course reducing costs because you are reducing resources. Now, here's a little bit of lean versus traditional processes. Why should we move into lean? Well, in the book, The Machine That Changed the World by James Womack and Daniel Jones and Ross, they have actually identified the following results. And look at the benefits. These are results that have been documented in the book from various organizations worldwide. You're reducing the hours of engineering effort by 50%. You're cutting the hours of human efforts in operations. And you're talking about substantial benefits. You're talking about 50% in some of these results that have been reported in the books. So you can see here benefits that are running into the double-digit numbers in terms of improvement. Now, lean as a concept as well focuses on eliminating waste, which we agreed on, but also on a number of concepts, including standardization of work, eliminating defects, which basically aligns with Six Sigma, and then identifying value based on customer needs. And this becomes the cornerstones of driving lean. Now, lean, once you want to do lean, you have to think about deployment and tools. So within lean, there are a number of tools that have to be learned or taught. And in our training courses, we basically focus on educating people, of course, on the mindset, on the history, but then we engage on certain tools. And we call them, I have them here in two levels. Level one is where we talk about exposing the waste. Calling a spade, where people come in and say, okay, where is the waste? Can we do a process mapping? Can we do some kind of a visual management or a value stream mapping, if you may, where we can identify the MODA, the waste. We may need to do a 5S exercise, which is more of a housekeeping exercise, and we can actually use it to clean our house and make it more efficient. And as we mature as an organization, we start to use a number of tools, including the standardization, the one-piece flow, the pull production, and we can start using these tools at the right stage with the right maturity. So there is some kind of a roadmap we suggest to organizations once they engage in the concept of lean as a strategy. And once I say a strategy, it's not just an ad hoc activity. It has to be driven by the strategy itself. I have another question here for you, which basically talks about the following. So here's a survey. What is the typical percentage of non-value added activities in lead time? So if you think of an activity and you say, okay, I want to identify waste based on a number of observations, practical cases, what would organization identify once we do this exercise of value stream mapping and we come in and we identify the total lead time versus the value added? You will be surprised. So let's see here. Okay. I see some people are picking the high numbers. As I told you, you'll be surprised. People will have the wow factor because they will have identified a high percentage of non-value added activities in their, if you look here, so you'll see here that 20%, 20%. Do you want to know the answer? Well, the answer here is 95% of total lead time is non-value added. This is usually when we do the value stream mapping exercises with companies, this comes as a shock. I mean, people are telling me, you mean 95% of the activities I'm doing are non-value added and only 5%? And we actually do this on a value stream map where you can actually identify waste. It's not about just, telling people that you're doing badly on value added. It's just saying there is a great opportunity where we can actually remove non-value added. So I'm sure right now you're wondering, what is non-value added? What is waste? What is MODA? So there is some kind of an agreement on what we call the 7 different types of waste, 7 deadly types of waste. They've been added or increased to an 8, so we have 8 different types of waste. Some people use the Tim Woods, which basically is an acronym to represent the different types of waste. So we can look at transportation, we can look at inventory, we can look at motion, we can look at waiting for processing, regardless of the reason. We can look at overproduction, over processing, defects, making inaccurate work, and S has been added, which is for staff, underutilized people and not using their skills. Our job in a lean exercise, for example, is trying to identify these different types of waste, and finding them is not difficult. Immediately, once you start to understand these different types of waste, you can immediately map them. You can actually do what we call in lean, go to the Gamba. Gamba is go to the workplace and observe, and you'll immediately see many of these different types of waste represented in your operation. So the 3 different types of, or the 8 different types of waste can be categorized into 3 areas: the people, the process, and the product. And whether you are doing a service or delivering a product, or you have people, these different types of waste can be observed in your processes. Everything results in cost, whether you're delaying, whether you're actually using or creating defects and then you have to do rework. This is money, or of course dissatisfied customers can create lots of cost as well. So our job is to identify these 7 different types of waste, and then we can identify them in our processes. These are, for example, the service industry. So, again, this is not about manufacturing. Don't even think this is only for manufacturing, although it started with Toyota. But right now, lean is implemented in hospitals, is implemented in government, in transactions. So you can look at errors, you can look at transport, you can look at motions, underutilized staff, backlogs. These are all examples of what we call service industries waste. And of course, once you take any type of a process map, something like this, and you bring the team in to challenge it and identify maybe different parts, different areas, and you move it into a new process, you can immediately reduce the cycle time. So for example, here, there's an average of 50 days have been reduced to an average of 7 days. And this is with reduction of waste. So again, this is what we do in a lean exercise, trying to understand what is there. I've picked here a couple of tools that we use within lean. One of them is called the 5S program, and the S's represent the 5 Japanese word for that. So here is a 5S. It is a program to clean, to organize the workplace so it becomes easier for users to retrieve and to manage. And of course, this aligns very well with the lean. So if you look at these pictures or these pictures here, you can see the mess, you can see the safety concerns, you can see the time it might take someone to actually retrieve a part. So what are we trying to do? We're trying to run a program that starts with 5 steps. Here are the Japanese word, here are the English equivalents, and we're trying basically here to do these steps to try to organize the workplace. The first one is sorting. I'm not going to go into it in too much detail. We usually spend time on this, and we have checklists to actually try to do it. Sometimes live examples in a company where we run the 5S, but this comes usually in our lean exercises and lean training. So you can just show you an example here. Here's before 5S. You can see here the amount of time needed maybe to retrieve something or to find something, and then of course here how it's being cleaned and the 5S has been done. Maybe here another pictures. You can see here the shadow boards, you can see the barcodes, you can see the IDs or the labels. So it's making life easier, and of course that will reduce mistakes and reduce time to do things. Another concept I picked for you is the one single piece flow, which basically challenges people to change their mindset and tell them, when you make one and you move one, it will be much faster than having what we call the batch and queue processing. And in this example, if we look at the batch, you can see here that it takes a lead time to do 30 minutes for the total order. So if you have a batch size of 10, you need 10 parts, 10 transaction, it will take you 30 plus minutes for the total order. While here, if you make one, you move one, you basically the total order will reduce to 12 minutes. And there are very nice exercises we do in our classes to actually show that this is really valid, and people do it and realize that this makes sense. So if you look here as well, the single piece flow can be also implemented by something called the cell arrangement. So these are techniques we use within lean. Whether, by the way, this could be for manufacturing, or this could be for service where people are doing transactions or files as well. And here is another chart sort of illustrating the batch versus the single piece flow as well. So this is on the lean and some of the concepts that we can use lean and how we can reduce defects and how can we reduce waste. Now, the question here, if this is lean and this is Six Sigma, which is better? So lean is about reducing waste. Lean is about reducing delay. Six Sigma is about reducing variation. Six Sigma is about reducing defects. So which one is better? Well, let me tell you that they complement each other. Lean is about waste. Lean Six Sigma is about defect. So Lean Six Sigma provides an initiative that you work together in terms of solving problems and improving processes and removing waste. So this is where we think about lean, and here is another thing about the integration. So lean unique emphasis is about waste, while this one is about variation, and they present a complementary approach. So this is what I would suggest, that both methods should be combined together. So in terms, here's also another slide that just explains the difference between lean and Six Sigma, and then how both techniques can be brought together. Lean usually takes shorter, so we call them Kaizen events. They could range between 3 to 5 days or maybe 2 weeks. Six Sigma, which runs the methodology of demake, define, measure, analyze, improve, control, usually can take, of course, longer, 4 to 7 months, and that comes into the Six Sigma training. And here's the summary. Speed, lean, versus accuracy, Six Sigma, but both will result in better delivery, better quality, and satisfied employees, and of course, customers. So lean is simple. However, sometimes implementing lean can present challenges to the organization in the mindset, in the resistance. So we recommend that there is a strategy for change, for transformation should be implemented within a lean structure. And this is how we can go about instilling the training and education within an organization. That's all for today. I hope I haven't bored you with lean. I hope you have picked a couple of good ideas on that. And if you have any questions, please let me know. You can either let us know now if you have any questions, and I'll be more than glad to answer. Or if you want to email us or me with your specific questions, that would be great. I would love to hear from you. So that is lean and how lean can be used as a strategy for operational excellence. Any questions, ladies and gentlemen? Any questions? All right, I think we don't have any questions. Well, okay. Well, thank you very much then. I hope you had a good webinar. You can always go back and listen to it. And as I mentioned, I'll be pleased to receive your emails, your questions on any of the lean concepts that we basically teach and train in our training courses as well. So thank you very much and have a great time, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. Thank you very much.
Meirc.com